Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I am just getting the YouTube live stream up now. So that will be available after this if you want to rewatch it or share it. You should also get the recording of the session in your inbox afterwards. So, alrighty. Cool. So yes, like I said, thank you guys for joining us for the first session in our staff hosted webinar series. We're really excited to have Mark Finch, our CTO, and Derek Potter, our head of product management, here to walk us through our new Vantage Plus update, which is free to all Vantage users. So they'll be walking through the new high speed mode, the implications of that, where we're headed next. And then we've got the Q&A section here open. So you can submit questions throughout. I'll be monitoring them, and then we'll have Derek and Mark answer those at the end. If you're interested in other webinars, we have these every Wednesday from now until November 11th. So we've got ProCalc next week, a Shogun update the following, and then we've got an accuracy project update from Tim Massey. And on November 11th, we'll have a presentation from Dr. Tom Shannon on clinical research and the overlap into animation. So you can check out our social channels for information or email me at marketing@vicon.com for more information. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mark and Derek.
Cool, who have been slightly awkwardly sitting here on mute as Alicia does a great introduction. Yeah, thanks very much for the introduction, Alicia. Mark and I are joining you from Oxford, England, where the head office of Vicon is located. Alicia is in Colorado, is in Denver, one of our other offices here at Vicon. Yeah, we're really excited to give a webinar, start off this little series that Alicia and the marketing team have put together for us. And the topic for today, as I'm sure you know, is Vantage Plus, our newest upgrade for our Vantage camera line. We thought we'd throw this up as well just to start, as this is the first one in the series. As Alicia mentioned, these go weekly, and you can see the list there that she mentioned of upcoming ones. So we hope if you enjoy this webinar that you might join us for some of the other ones. So just to start off, we thought we would introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about who we are and what our roles are here at the company. I think Alicia told us we've got about 140 people registered for this, so it's quite a large number. Some of you I might know, I used to get out a little bit more onto the conference circuit, but they don't let me out of the building as often as they used to. And Mark is still fairly new here in Oxford, so we thought we'd lead in with this. My name is Derek Potter, and I'm the head of the product management team. I've got a background in biomechanics, so I come more from the scientific side of motion capture. I've got about 20 years working with motion capture, starting all the way back in my undergrad days, which are well behind me these days. And I've been with Vicon for the last 16 years. I originally moved over from Canada and started with the support teams, installing systems and working with customers, training them how to use our software, which was a great foundation for me leading into what I currently do, which is product management. And product management really has a lot to do with being outward facing, talking to customers, seeing how they're using our systems, and trying to bring that information back into the business. And specifically working with Mark and all of his development teams to see how we can take the needs of what our users are using and how we can roadmap our technology forward to provide exciting new functionality and meet those needs. So then maybe I'll pass over and Mark can introduce himself.
Yeah, it's funny doing a webinar in the same room.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I don't know whether to look at the camera or at you. Anyway, I'm Mark Finch, the CTO here at Vicon. I'm pretty new on the scene here. It's coming up 2 years now. 2 years in Jan, which has gone by very quickly, but very sort of been a great kind of couple of years leading into this. So my background, I have a master's in biomedical engineering that I did back in Auckland, New Zealand, and started the company iMeasureU back in 2013, which sort of builds inertial measurement units and has sort of sports science, elite sport applications on top of that. We were acquired by Vicon back in 2017, and we've kind of sort of now obviously been fully integrated into the company, and I took on the role of CTO, as I sort of mentioned, 2 years ago now, which has been very exciting. So I manage the umbrella of all the technology in the sort of Vicon family across all the different markets. And for someone who absolutely loves tech, it's kind of, like being a kid in a candy shop, which is pretty cool. So like I said, 2 years gone by, but very excited about the future and what the future has to hold, and kind of what I can bring to this role as driving the technology aspect of the company forward to help sort of achieve the product needs that you guys are all putting forward. And I think the Vantage Plus is a good sort of first sort of cab off the rank in that respect. Looking at sort of what the technology was already there and how we could change things to meet the market needs of what we're kind of looking into for this presentation. So
yeah, as a company that was, and as a product manager, that was one of the great things about having Mark come in. Looking at our technology, our existing technology, with a new set of eyes, looking to see what might be possible there that we hadn't tapped into yet. And I think also Mark brought a fairly sort of dynamic startup mentality to the company that we've really benefited from. So it's been really great that way. So that's who we are, and that's why we're presenting to you today. I think before we forge right into what Vantage Plus is, we wanted to talk a little bit about the Vicon philosophy and how that really empowered the concept of Vantage Plus. As I mentioned in my intro, I've worked for the company now for more than 16 years. And the philosophy that Vicon has that I think has really served us and our customers well, and that I've always really liked, are encompassed by a few of these points I have up on the screen. We're always making great efforts to work directly with our customers, seeing what works for them, seeing how their needs are changing. And needs within motion capture have been changing quite rapidly over the past even 5 years, I would say, with the technology really gaining traction in more areas than we used to have. I think we've always prided ourselves on making particularly our hardware very future-proofed, putting a lot of extra power under the hood, giving us the ability to support our customers as their technology needs change by unlocking some of that power. And that's really what Vantage Plus is about. It's a great example of us being able to do that, which we're really excited about. So roughly, again, with sort of the product and technology partnership that Mark and I have from our different roles, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Vantage Plus is, and then eventually we're going to get to a point and Mark will talk a little bit about how we achieve that. So a little bit of the what and the how, which we think will cover this fairly well. 5 things that I'm going to talk to you about in terms of what Vantage Plus is. In case you don't know yet, in case you haven't seen any of the other marketing, I'm going to talk about, well, what is the Plus? I'm going to introduce you to something called the camera triangle, which I think is a good way to understand how the camera mode differs in Vantage Plus. Talk about what speed priority mode is, look a little bit at what the actual numbers from the frame rates of the cameras are, and then probably Mark and I will both wrap up with a concept of what we see as the main benefits to our customers and the main benefits in Vantage Plus. So what is the Plus? Okay, well, it's simple. Our Vantage cameras, which have been on the market for a number of years now, the Plus in this case is a new speed mode. And as I mentioned before, when we've been talking to customers at conferences, feedback through inquiries, one of the things that's really been raising in terms of requirement needs, things people want to do with our cameras, is be able to work with a really high resolution camera like the Vantage camera, but be able to work at higher frame rates. And speed was something we knew we had to be able to accomplish. And so this is what product brought to the development teams and said, here's a list of things people really want to do. What can we do here? And what we ended up coming up with is a new firmware for all of our Vantage cameras. And it's a free firmware update that adds an entirely new mode. So the cameras still work exactly as they have in the past, but now every one of the Vantage cameras has a new speed mode on top of it. And the main point of that is to not only increase the maximum frame rate that the cameras can work at, but do that in such a way that maintains the field of view of the camera. And why that's important, or why we feel that's really important, we'll talk about during my camera triangle slides as well. So really what Vantage is about, it's about a high-speed mode added to all of our cameras. It's a completely free upgrade, and it unlocks some existing power that Mark and the hardware team found in that platform because we future-proofed it. So now we get to this, which I thought is just things like this I always find work well with a visual. For existing customers with Vantage cameras, which I'm assuming most of the people attending this session will be, what you're seeing in front of you is a representation of how our cameras currently work in the mode that they've always had, which is we would refer to as now resolution priority mode, or also windowing mode. And the little triangle here shows you that as we push the cameras forward in terms of how fast we want to run them, all of the existing Vantage cameras will run in full field of view up to a certain frame rate. And then when our users want to push past that frame rate and run faster, then what we'll end up doing is trying to prioritize the maintenance of resolution. And what we'll end up trading off to go faster is some of the field of view with the camera. And as a visual demonstration, I've got this. So the red lines that you're seeing here are a representation of what the camera would see at a lower frame rate. And then in terms of pushing that camera faster and faster, and me saying that we trade off some of the field of view, those blue lines are what we're talking about. So basically what the camera sees as you increase faster and faster, we start sacrificing a little bit of what the camera can see in order to allow you to run those cameras faster. And so that's the current mode. Our new high-speed mode uses a different relationship within the camera. And that's why it's a completely separate new mode. So that existing mode is still there, but all of the new cameras, or all of the Vantage cameras, once they're updated to Vantage Plus cameras, can then use this different relationship, or the high-speed mode. And what Mark and his team were able to accomplish is changing that trade-off so that we prioritize, rather than prioritizing the resolution, we prioritize the frame rate. Sorry, we prioritize the field of view, meaning that we can change that situation and we can run the cameras much higher much higher capture rates, but we maintain what the camera sees. But the trade-off we make is we trade off a different part of the triangle. We trade off some of the resolution in order to run the cameras at a higher frame rate. And again, I think I talk about this later, but since we got the visual up, I'll probably point this out. One of the benefits of changing between a dynamic where the field of view changes as you change the frame rate to one where the field of view is more maintained as you change the frame rate is in labs or capture volumes where you're running different experiments or collecting different things. If you're changing the frame rate and it changes the field of view, then by maintaining field of view, it means you very rarely ever have to adjust the cameras. So that's a benefit if you're running multiple setups within the same space. So that's very much the what of it, what we're doing. And this is what it actually looks like in terms of numbers. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is the existing setup, or the standard mode now, or the default mode for the Vantage cameras. And that mode works exactly as it always has, and you can leave the cameras in that mode. And that is the resolution prioritized mode. And what you see on the chart there below, you can see the 3 different main cameras that we have in our Vantage cameras: the 16 megapixel V16, the 8 megapixel V8, and the 5 megapixel V5. And the frame rates that you see in the first column are the maximum frame rates that those cameras can run before we start doing a process called windowing. So you can see for V16, V8, and V5, the top resolutions are 120 hertz, 260 hertz, or 420 hertz. Now, if we flip over to the right-hand side of the screen, I'll get my mouse up here, a little bit of an indicator. Oops, daisy. Sorry. A little too far over there. If we look on the right-hand side of the screen, what we can see is that in high-speed mode, we move from 120 to 500 hertz. We move from 260 hertz up to 910 hertz. And we move from 420 hertz up to 1070 hertz. So quite a significant jump that you can get with high-speed mode. Although, as I'd mentioned before, and I think Mark is going to touch on, there's, this is always a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah.
We can provide you these extra speeds, but you'll notice that what we end up doing is leveraging more of the resolution within the camera in order to give you these higher speeds. I've also got this small chart down below because one of the things that we know as well with our users is that certain collection rates are kind of key collection rates. And the V8 and the V5 hit 910 and 1070, when really what most people are interested in high speed is just a slightly step forward from that, the 1000 hertz or 1200 hertz. And what this bottom chart is demonstrating to you is that even in high speed mode, we can still push the cameras faster, but we do that by adding the same thing that we've always done, which is windowing. So by sacrificing about 9.5% or 11% of what the camera is seeing, so that's 4.5% of the pixels at the top, 4.5% of the pixels at the bottom, you can push the camera like a V8 to 1,000 frames with only a small decrease in what we have to leverage in the resolution. So I've kind of gone through all the what is it actually and what do you get. Mark is now, I'm going to hand this over to Mark, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about how the team technically achieved that, because I think that's an interesting part of it as well.
Yeah, so I'll go through, I guess, as it stands, the different sensor modes of what we currently do with windowing, and then talk through the method that we've implemented to enable this high-speed mode, which is subsampling, and then we can go through some example data as a sort of just an indication of what actually happens to the pixels that you're trying to read in this new mode, because there is a trade-off in the resolution, right?
Probably is good. The thing, depending on who all's in the crowd, and I think there's over 100 people, so it's difficult to tell. But yeah. I think one of the things we know is that there are some different technical approaches that people might already be aware of because they're used in other technologies that people use. So being able to define, I suppose, exactly what we're doing is a benefit for.
Absolutely, and I'll touch on that when we go through the subsampling of And I'm trying to sort of, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to use sort of an image like this, or this image, as an example of actually what happens to your end image as a consequence of what the modes actually do. So you can kind of look and see the effect that the different modes have on what you're actually looking at, right? So if we sort of imagine on the left is what the entire image is that you were looking at. If we window currently, we reduce the height and width, right? But you keep the DPI, so the resolution of the image you see remains the same as the original, but you can only see, in this case, the beard, right? So that is what windowing does to your image at the moment. You keep the resolution of what you can actually see, but you can't actually see the entire picture, right? And this has its pros and cons, and we know that this is a great sort of method in increasing the frame rate in the field as it is. But we do know that people sometimes want to keep the full image in view. So that's kind of the stance we took on when trying to tackle this problem.
But also why we made it a separate mode,
Yeah.
so that you had the choice between
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah.
Clipping Van Gogh's ear off, intentional bit of humor in the presentation? No? All right.
Yeah.
Windows' ear.
Reading too far.
Anyone? A Van Gogh joke? No? All right, moving on.
Right. So I'll talk through this subsampling, which is the method that we've used to increase the rate at which we can read the pixels. So I mean, if you imagine you have a problem where you have a processor that's reading all the images and all the pixels, and you can only go so fast, right? So you're at the full speed mode, normal mode, you're kind of reading each one, and you fill up your buffer of what can be read, and that kind of goes through a pipe, and you can't make that pipe any bigger. So that's kind of why we were stuck on the resolutions and speeds that we had kind of had previously. So what we can do is actually we can take less pixels, right? And then you can take more pixels for a higher frame rate to fill that sort of pipe up. So if you kind of think of that analogy and the trade-off of what you're actually reading from the pixels to channeling it down the electronic sort of pathway to what we can actually get through the throughput. So subsampling is a pretty standard method of reducing image size in any kind of image processing packages. If you reduce your on your phone, you can say from a 5 megapixel to a 1 megapixel. Subsampling is a method that is used. What we're doing is actually just taking every second pixel on both the X and the Y axis, right? And then looking at only those pixels, which if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see the effect that this has on the image, right? So again, on the left, you have a full 16 megapixel image, right? Taking every second pixel on the X and Y, you get half and half. So the image is actually a quarter of the size, which brings it down to 4 megapixel, right? So if you scale that up to the same sort of height as, so comparing now the left and right photo, you can see it's Van Gogh, obviously, but it's blurry. And that's kind of what happens. That's the effect on the image from having a subsampling done to it, but it's half the size, and you're getting, again, the relationship of a higher frame rate with that sort of output resolution, right? So, hopefully that's a pretty sort of clear analogy in what it actually does under the hood, and then the effect that has on the image coming out. And then if we kind of go to the next slide, we can have a look at some real marker data, right? So on the left, we have a V16, which is, you can see kind of the density of the pixels in there. And then on the right, we have the subsampled image, which again is a quarter of the pixels. Some light and dark will be missed because it is literally just taking every second pixel. So the edges are a little bit more less
Sawtooth.
Defined, right? It's more sawtooth, yeah.
And again, two of the things I was going to throw out here, I think Mark and I, because we work so closely in this all the time, you often forget things. I would imagine that for most of you, again, expecting that the majority of you are current Vantage customers, this will be something that you're familiar with. But just in case you're not, this is a grayscale image. So this is what the camera sensor actually sees. And as Mark is pointing out, if you look closely, you really can see the definition difference, or the size, for instance, of the small squares on the left compared to the right.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I was going to throw in there, again, that we kind of assume that the entire audience knows, but just make sure that it's clear. When we talk about firmware, we're talking about the operating system or the set of software, if you will, that runs directly on the camera.
Yeah.
And that's how your hardware team actually implemented this change with the same sensor.
Yeah, and that's also the beauty of being able to deliver it to everyone, because it is just an upgrade to the sort of the system that we all have, and it'll sort of add this mode into sort of the general operations, right?
Yep.
Not to say that all the changes had to be made through all the softwares, but we'll kind of cover that later.
Yep.
This is more I guess the technical aspect of literally how we will manage to get higher frame rates through the same camera that sort of typically hasn't been able to do that in the past.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool.
So here's another example. Again, the grayscale images of sort of a pulsar sort of setup. Again, on the left, we have our standard sort of setup, and the right is the subsampled. Here you can pretty clearly see the actual the pixel definition, noting that all and there isn't much blur between light and dark on the right hand side, right? So, and that is what happens when you pick every second pixel. You don't get that roll off of going from lighter to darker. It is generally light or dark because you miss some pixels in there, right?
But again, I guess we could describe this all as the same kind of trade-off between different modes. Is you can run at slower rates with slightly better definition, or you can leverage a little bit of that resolution, slightly less details, but push the camera to faster speeds.
Yeah, and absolutely, and you know, again, it is adding a new mode for people to kind of use, which has its own set of use cases that it will satisfy.
Yep.
Right. So it's not you have the good old sort of Vantage on the left that will kind of continue to
true. Yep.
Deliver sort of and then the subsampled on the right, which is that increase in frame rate, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and again, maybe I'll just take it back from a product side again and say one of the things that was really exciting about being able to unlock this extra power, I think, is we're seeing in motion capture in general at Vicon, we're seeing the specific use cases for people who want to run at higher speeds. That group of people or those use cases are really increasing. But I think even more than that, there has definitely been, for a good long time now, probably about the last 8 or 10 years, a shift from the number of people wanting to do one specific thing and only one specific thing towards people wanting to do a real variety of things. We have a lot more customers, and again, not being able to see who's out there, I'm not sure how many of them might be here, but we do still have some sets of customers that are very specific at looking at one thing, like for instance, gait analysis within a clinical setting. But we have a lot more customers who are doing multi-experiments, systems that are shared at, say, universities from different departments, some of which might be looking at engineering, some looking at sports biomechanics, some looking at more static measurement kind of things. Within engineering, we've got a much more wide variety of customers within the same company who want more. And I think actually that's the message that really came back to us is we'd like more flexibility within the system to be able to set the camera up in different ways and meet more needs, basically. And this was, we felt, a really good example of that.
Absolutely.
Working.
I mean, the university that I came from in New Zealand, you'd have a sports biomechanist in the lab in the morning, right, sort of doing some sprints sort of on the force plates, and then in the afternoon or late morning you'd have someone come in with a drone setup that they want to track, and then in the afternoon a clinical sort of data set will come through. And they all have very different needs in sort of camera requirements and speed to be able to capture high fidelity movements, or sort of a lower sort of gait cadence. Now they can just switch the mode on the software, and it's cool.
Absolutely. Okay. Hopefully I'm going to get the volume right, because Mark and I unintentionally blasted ourselves with this video before.
Yeah.
This is the launch video that our marketing team put together, and we just thought it was so cool that we had to show it during this presentation.
Just
so
a shout out to the marketing team on this. I mean, they've done an excellent job in putting all the content together, and we thought, definitely
add an extra layer of cool on top of it. So we're gonna, hold on, sorry, operator error.
Yeah, so this was obviously the teaser video that came out sort of early September.
Yeah, about a month ago.
And all the other ones that have followed. But no, great work to Alicia and the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a pretty cool video. Pretty cool stuff, and we love when people make us look cool. So give them a shout out for that. Oh, there we go. Sorry, you're right. Sorry,
he's not the CTO.
Yeah, that's why I'm in product and not marketing or technology. Anyway, this is a Vantage camera upgrade. So as we've mentioned before, just in order to turn a Vantage camera into a Vantage Plus, whether it's V5, V8, or V16, all you need is this firmware update, which is completely free for all Vantage customers. In terms of support within the software platforms, as many of you will know, obviously, we've got different software platforms that are focused for different needs within life science or engineering or VFX. We already have support for Nexus in Nexus 2.11. Tracker had a release that upgraded support for Vantage Plus. Shogun 1.5 is the last of the 3 major platforms, and we're having an update to Shogun 1.5 in October. That is also going to add this support. Shogun's lagging behind a little bit because it's got a little extra feature work in it as well that we're equally excited about. But by the end of this month, all of the platforms across the board, plus the firmware, will make us fully Vantage Plus supporting. So regardless of what you're working in, you should have access to it. So then, just kind of wrapping up now with a few things, we wanted to sort of encapsulate what we see as the benefits of Vantage Plus and why we're excited about it and feel it was a really good project for us to do and deliver to you, our users. The benefits of what Vantage Plus does, 3 main things I've thrown up here that hopefully we've spoken about as we've gone through. Because it adds this extra mode and this whole extra level of speed possibilities, it makes every camera in the Vantage range more flexible. I think Mark's example was probably the really good one. If you're working with a drone in the morning and a llama in the afternoon, everyone knows llamas are faster moving objects, right? It gives you that flexibility. 1 camera with 2 modes means you support more use cases. There are a set of high-speed requirements for certain customers that we simply couldn't support before, and now we can fully support those with these higher frame rates of capture. And then harkening back to that camera triangle that I showed everyone with the difference in field of view, how it changes, it also means that in many cases, if the high-speed mode meets your needs, it also means that you can move within a range of frame rates without having to physically adjust your camera. And that for a multi-use lab can also be a pretty big time saver. So those are 3 things that we think are really solid benefits of the Vantage Plus upgrade. And then again, talking about examples of, what are we actually talking about? Where do we see Vantage Plus really being of benefit, really being of use? couple of them we already brought up. Sports biomechanics, which is a very large section of customers within our life science side. Frame rates of 250 or 500 hertz, or even faster. For some things like equipment studies. Those higher frame rates are things that are of great benefit and have been requested from those groups. Drone tracking, I think we see quite a big rise in drone tracking. They tend to move very fast, and in large outdoor environments, the speed is a necessity, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, athletes are getting faster, drones are getting faster. Faster and bigger is kind of the theme there, right? And larger sort of areas and volumes.
And also within sort of, I suppose, another good example within sports biomechanics is you can talk about athletes moving faster, or if everyone, and again, I'm suspecting most people are familiar with Nyquist, the smaller, subtler movements you want to look at, you want to capture at higher frame rates, and that's also a benefit within here. And then the last one, I don't know if we have many users from our VFX community in here, or whether it's more life science and engineering. Within VFX, there's probably a less direct drive for us to have higher frame rates. But one of the places that we're also seeing benefit from the higher frame rates of Vantage Plus is that higher frame rates provide a slight benefit to latency of data. And another place that we've been moving into that we're quite excited about is the new world of what's called virtual production. And you may have seen some YouTube stuff online. If you haven't, I encourage you to look at it because it's super cool. But running at higher speed rates, higher frame rates allows us to reduce latency. And that's of massive benefit to people in that industry.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad for time. So anyway, I hope that gives you a good overview of what Vantage Plus is, how it works, and why we see it as a benefit. We've got another 20 minutes, really. And we would be more than happy to take any questions you have. Any comments? We'd love to know if any of you are already using Vantage Plus. Feel free to shoot. If you, I guess, how do we do this?
Maybe Alicia, you can.
Yeah, maybe Alicia.
Inform the.
Yeah, we have a couple questions in the panelist chat, and then 2 in the Q&A also. So can you see those down on the?
Hold on. Bear with me, caller.
First time.
Oh, there it is. Can you see my mouse? Oh, there it is. I have no idea why my mouse isn't working. Give me 1 sec here, Alicia. Nah, we'll go old school. Hold on. There we go.
Or maybe stop your screen share.
Yeah, maybe do that. Crazy.
Hey, your mouse is crazy.
Mouse is off now. There we go. Okay, finally it's solved. Sorry, there we go. So if I click on the Q&A, if I stop sharing, if I click on, there we go. Now we're cooking with gas. All right, now we got some questions. Let's see. Chad, hey Chad, is there a minimum marker size you recommend for using the new mode? Oh, cool. No, not necessarily, but what I would say is that basically the rule of thumb or the concept you can use is that when we go into high speed mode, as Mark kind of talked about, we leverage or sacrifice some of the resolution. And so the way you can look at it is if you go into high speed mode and we're roughly getting a quarter of the resolution that you had before, basically, I suppose I would say the same understanding that, and if you were with Guided Knowledge, I'm sure you guys have been working with the system for ages. you can roughly use that as your rule of thumb, if you will. So the same question is, rather than saying what would you use with high speed mode, you just look at the resolution and you say, what would work for a 4 megapixel camera? Would we have to change the marker size? And then if you have like specific questions, that's the kind of thing, feel free just to, give us a call or give the support guys a call, and we can help you in a little more detail with that.
Yeah, I guess the balance and trade-off to that is if the smaller the marker, the smaller the pixels that you'll be able to see, right? The less number of pixels. So again, the larger the marker, the better it will be seen at a longer distance. So there might be a trade-off between the size of the marker and the range you get based on high speed mode. And if, like Potter said, is if you treat it as sort of a 4 megapixel image or a quarter of the native image, that kind of can help guide on which marker size to use for that.
Yeah, and a great thing to do, throw back on my old support hat here. A great thing to do as well is if you know the experiment you're going to be working with, and you know roughly the ranges or the speeds or what you're doing, doing a little bit of a trial run in 2D mode, because if you can see it in 2D, you know what you're going to get, and that's how you can decide, hey, a 9mm, we're just not seeing enough pixels, we're going to have to go up to 14. It's a good way to make that work. Let's grab another one here out of the bag. There's lots of questions coming in. That's good. Does this reduce number of cameras as well? And by this I mean, suppose we have 6 Vantage V8s for one application. Can it be done with 4 Vantage Plus? No. I would say that that's really not what Vantage Plus is about. Good question. I get it, but really in this case, the change up to high speed mode, as we kind of mentioned a few times, is going to. Oh, actually, sorry, I know where you're going now. It's going to leverage a little bit of the resolution, so you're going to have slightly less resolution, but you're going to maintain the field of view. So it's a bit of a trick answer. The thing here is that if your 6-camera system, you need to have a 6-camera system because of the field of view of the cameras, then the answer might be yes. By maintaining more field of view, you might get slightly more coverage with the same cameras. But if the resolution of the system with the 6 cameras is what's allowing you to do the experiment, and the answer is no, it probably won't change the situation. If that makes sense. Another one. Thank you for your presentation. You're welcome. You mentioned updates in Shogun in October. Is there any released information on what those features will be? Ooh. No, there's no sort of preview, although if you sent a question in about that, we might be able to give you a little bit of information. Send it directly into us. I won't, I'm not going to steal Tim Doubleday's the product manager on that. I won't steal his thunder, but Tim's pretty good about giving you a heads up on things. Let's see, where's the next one? These incremental improvements are great and useful for the users now, but since we have you both in the room, oh, I feel a setup coming on. This feels like an Admiral Akbar moment of trap here. I'd love to hear what you think will be the next big thing in motion capture technology in 5 to 10 years. Little off topic, Kyle, but we're flexible. We can roll with it. I would say the next big thing. Sure. Okay, I'll give you my 2 cents. The next big thing in motion capture in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going to give you not one thing, but 2 things. The 2 things that I think are probably big things are fused data, the combination of different modalities, which is something that we at Vicon probably at least 8 or 10 years ago stopped talking about ourselves as optical motion capture companies and just started talking about ourselves as motion capture. And it was one of the great things about iMeasureU coming into the family is we're already looking at combining different technologies to provide better outputs. And I think the second thing, the big thing in motion capture is that you're going to start seeing it in a lot more places. Our interests, I think, from different market sectors, different environments, different places, I think you're going to see motion capture in a lot more places. And that's because we'd like to think we're making the technology easier to use, which makes it more applicable for more places. And we're looking at how to fit it into new environments as well.
Yeah, I'd add to that in that you'll probably, and we are seeing already a good influx of machine learning and artificial intelligence in all parts of the pipeline. In sort of better managing markers or looking at gate characteristics or sort of camera characteristics, and I think that'll play a big part over the next sort of 15 years or 10 years in what sort of what motion capture will actually will enable, right?
Yeah, I mean that could be, I hate using buzz terms, but it could be a game changer in the fact that that approach that you guys are doing in development literally could accelerate almost any area of interest that we have, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of exciting. The idea of being able to move faster on the ground as a company like ours. Okay, one more question here. Jeff, oh God, I don't want to mispronounce this. Jeff Ovadia? I think I know that guy. It's an inside question. Can you talk a little bit about using active markers in high-speed environments? Is there any benefit with IR light emissions from the source, from IR light emitting from the source? I think I understand what you mean. Well, I would say, is there any benefit? We, again, talking about us moving forward and where we're taking the technology, we've definitely been in the process of making a shift from passive markers to active markers. In terms of high-speed environments, I would say the benefits that I see of active markers have to do more with things like the range that you can see them at and the quality of the circle fit, because you get a more perfect fitting. The fast moving aspect of it, I would say, is probably neither benefit nor degradation. And that's because of the fact that we've invested so much in the wireless synchronization capabilities of the system, meaning that with another piece of technology that we have, Vicon, that Jeff is very familiar with, we're able to sync our light sources at a level higher than any other company that we know of. And that means that you get brilliantly synchronized active marker data along with all those other things that we see as beneficial, like perfect fitting and increased range with IR light.
So if you open the chat.
Oh God, there's more. All right. Robson. Hey, Robson. I assume that's Robson from Brazil. Cool, man. Haven't seen him in a couple of years. Derek, do we have the option to choose what's prioritized when increasing the frame rate, or will it do it automatically? Yeah, cool. Yeah, so basically, those two triangles, the resolution prioritized or the frame rate prioritized, sorry, field of view prioritized. I probably didn't make it clear, but those are the two modes. So you're choosing within the software to run in default mode, which is windowing mode, or to choose to run in high speed mode. And that's where you're making that choice. The other thing we probably didn't make clear, if you want to take this one, is that windowing still works with high speed mode as well.
Yeah. So you can, if you choose the high speed mode, right, it'll go up to a point where as the top frame rates that we listed in there, and if you push the frame rate up further, it'll just slightly window those field of views down.
And we've still done that as an automatic process as well.
Yeah.
So that was your question, Robson. Then hopefully that answers it. If I'm reading something else in there, if it's talking about maybe fine tuning or taking bits and pieces, That's not something. Oh,
Yes, thank you.
yes, it is there. Oh, good to
Now
know.
I'm here, Paul.
Thank you. Okay, where are we going here?
So
Oh.
there's a question on, I guess, subsampling of V16, looking at the reduced CAN review distance on a typical 16 mil marker. So yeah, so I guess the relationship of a 16 megapixel image versus a 4 megapixel image, right? If you think of the markers that you can see, obviously the 16 has more, the 4 will have less. So you'll only be able to see, you'll be able to see the 16 at a larger distance than you will the 4.
Yep. So
that there is a trade-off on range with the lower resolution image. And there's sort of a relationship in there but you treat it basically as a 4 megapixel image rather than a 16 megapixel.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of a good way to think about the change of range or view distance that you'll be able to see those markers. Right.
And if that's the James Norman, I know that question will cost you a free copy of Suicide Squad, because that trailer looked amazing. Who else have we got on here? Got that one. Couple questions from the panel. Oh. Couple questions from the panel. Oh, okay. And there's one of our friends at Ubisoft. Have to run. Thanks for putting that together. Okay. Damn, can't hit him up for any free games. And what else? A few more from James. Or is that, do we already cover that?
I think we have everything that's been submitted. So unless we have any other questions.
No, it doesn't look like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that case, thanks very much for attending. We hope that was useful for people. Some great questions at the end, so I think we really appreciate that.
And if any other questions come up or you want to ask anything privately, feel free to email it through to us.
Absolutely.
Or to Alicia, and she can pass it on to us.
Yeah, if you go through Alicia, you'll have her contacts, and if there's specific things for Mark or myself, please feel free to come right over to us. This is another great thing about the concept of webinars, sort of being able to try and connect directly with people, even in the crazy time of COVID. Also, the further webinar series, again, if you've enjoyed this one and found it useful, please check out some of the others. They're going every week, and Alicia has the full schedule that she can share with everybody. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Right.
Bye.